Hi BookTube, it's Amy, and I'm back with the private papers of a bankrupt bookseller by Will Y. Darling. This is the 1931 fictionalized diary of a bookseller. And we have reached page 67 in my edition. It's been a couple weeks since we've read, but we are back to continue on here. We're on page 67, titled Notes on Suicide. The subject of suicide is one on which I have no books. Not that I have been asked for them. It is my own curiosity which prompts my investigations. The reference books in the public library are my only authority, and it is doubtful if such should be made available in a public place if the law is to maintain its consistency. I have fancied sometimes in these sore days, when the world is too much with us, that a temple of euthanasia ought to be erected for those who feel that the time has come for them to go, they having few illusions left. It would be, need one say, a beautiful building, for all who paid their final devoir there would leave, if not all, something substantial to its maintenance. The poor, to whom even the free justice is denied, would have freedom there at last. They would pay no fees. I plan a temple in a garden. There would be outer courts for those who wanted to say farewell, but these would be a minority. To preserve the peace, a spacious garden, trees surely, would shut off the temple from these and the outer world. There would be no moaning at the bar for those who set out on the deep waters. There are difficulties in devising the arrangements. I understand from my studies and inquiries that hanging is the most popular or most frequent practiced. Of recent years, gas poisoning has become rather a vogue, but hanging, at least for men, is still the favorable mode. Women avail themselves of gas and drowning, and it is stated that the highest number of suicides who take to the water is to be found during the months of May, June, and July. Since the war, ex-soldiers have resorted largely to firearms, but recently the Home Office has taken very special steps to ensure registration and the giving up of war weapons. Soldiers, serving soldiers in all countries, show a high rate of suicide. It is held that the high rate among men-at-arms is due to the facility with which the means for suicide are available. The Salvation Army has a suicide bureau, but no details are made public. There are no other organizations dealing with the problem. The Church has never been too kind to suicides. To die intestate was a grave sin in the Middle Ages. The man who went into the unknown, unshriven, had no opportunity to make a gift to the Church before going. They were, these hasty ones, denied Christian burial, and the only sign of the cross they knew was the lonely grave at the crossroads. Nowadays we are less squeamish. Respect for property is waning, and perhaps it is some consolation to know that there is an increasing inclination among ordinary folks to allow us to do what we like with the most personal of all properties, our breath. The law, and then the Church, will come into line before long too, and man will be able to go to his long home when he likes. I recollect Dr. Johnson on suicide. He was asked whether a criminal should commit suicide to avoid arrest. Sir, let him go abroad to a distant country. Let him go to some place where he is not known. Don't let him go to the devil where he is known. The quotation is from Sir, said Johnson, published by Duckworth. It is a collection of some sayings arranged by C. Byron, published at 6 sous. The book is offered at 3 sous by me. I don't like Johnson on this point. The discussion with Goldsmith on the same subject shows that Johnson did not consider suicide an unmanly or a cowardly act. The subject ought to be discussed more than it has been. Socrates really committed suicide. Christ might be said to have set the great example of willing death. He died at the right time. His work was done. Did he not say, "It is finished"? Willing death and this suicide question keep recurring in my mind. I ought not to allow it. It is the sort of road, I imagine, that people go before they actually decide to take their lives. What Dr. Johnson has said on suicide is really of no importance to me, and I should really not have troubled myself to rewrite it. Of course, I never asked for life. It is an unsought-for boon as far as I'm concerned, and have been in nothing but trouble since it was given to me. I must break this thread of thought, and to do so I am going to take out my window this morning. It has been in long enough. I will get my cloth, my pail, and some water, and wash out the bottom of it. These tasks are good for me. They take my mind away from suicide. And his next chapter heading here is titled Additional Notes on Suicide. Simpkins publish epigrams compiled by Walter Gerard, a handy book to read between times. This chimes with the mood that caused me to write the foregoing. On Suicide, from Marshall. When all the blandishments of life are gone, the coward creeps to death, the brave lives on. George Sewell. I don't agree. The man who lives on may be brave, but he may also be a glutton. The suicide says finally to the banquet of life, enough. I am demanded by a tall, angular Anglican gentleman for a copy of Dr. F.W. Farrar's Lives of the Fathers. I have not a copy of this work, which I have subsequently discovered was published by A&C Black in 2 volumes some years ago. The angular Anglican was very severe with me, apparently through no fault of my own. I did not know of the existence of the work, and he was not as patient with my ignorance as perhaps his profession ought to have made him. I am revenged, however, in the idleness of an empty forenoon, for I have written 12 lines of verse, which I have dedicated to him. Here they are. My pride it is my poverty, I own but what I need, a virtue of necessity, it is my only greed. I have nothing but my longing, my all is my desire. From me thieving is no wronging, take then what you require. So rich then is my lowliness, I'm filled with what I've not. Keep you your heights, your holiness, mine is the happier lot. I feel better. I won't think of suicide again today. And our next heading here on page 71 is titled A Bookseller Analyzes Himself. Last night there were fireworks in the street, and I slept badly. How I hate noise. It was the war that brought it home to me as an intense conviction. The wantonness of it amazes me. Does it please anyone, really please anyone, to let off what they call Chinese cannons? I can't believe it, yet so fearfully and wonderfully are we made that hundreds last night congregated in the streets and heralded every explosion with loud shouts of appreciation. A lot has been written about noise and its effects on health, but the writers write in vain. Every day the world around me becomes more and more a melange of clanging and banging, of shouting and grinding, of barking and groaning, of chattering and clattering. The machinery of our modern life obviously creaks, and there is not enough oil in all the wells of all the world to bring it peace and lubrication. Veritably, the whole creation of God groaneth and travelleth, and there is no Saviour but the hope of a duller sensibility than that with which I have been endowed. At 6 I could lie in bed no longer, and with a cup of tea for internal comfort, I was away with an apple in one pocket and a book in another. The shop, as I passed through it and out, was close smelling of print and binding glue and the dust of yesterday, and I did not linger. By 7 I was on the crest of the lower ridges of the hills that surround us here, and gladness possessed me. The quiet which the night had denied me was here with the morning, and I said aloud, here now in this moment, I am at one with the best in the universe. I am happy. I analyzed that feeling. Where was it? Whence did it come? Would it have been mine without the Chinese cannonade, and the sleep, the bad nights, and the early rising, and the cup of tea, and the breath of fresh morning air that met my face when I issued from my shop door? I wondered, and wondering left the miracle unsolved in the enjoyment of it. Back in the shop I have more time, for the book-lookers and book-handlers and book-buyers are not about yet, and I reflect how rarely do we find perfect bliss and happiness. How rarely do we say, here and now I am happy, and yet how often are we visited by unearned, unexpected transports of pure joy. Do we seek the life ever more abundantly as we should? Do we strive once a year even to achieve the perfect day? We don't, and yet We should, if we are to deserve immortal bliss. How can we deserve eternal happiness living as we live? I see in a Bunyan-like vision the end of it all. I come after much tribulation before the great white throne and before the judge of all the world. The recorder reads my record, and I am ashamed. The very reading of it sounds like doom, and in my apocalypse a voice, deliberate, slow, inexpressibly final, pronounces my fate. 70 years were yours. You had health enough to be happy. You had time enough to achieve anything. How did you spend your health and time, which were the fabric of your daily life? I covered my eternal hills in winter with stainless snow. In summer I clothed them in lovely greenness. You heeded them not. I filled the skies by day with sunshine, and by night I lit them with stars. You heeded them not. The pageant of the seasons I presented year by year for your delight and happiness, and every wonder of the world was yours to see. You heeded them not. There is no need to pronounce your doom, O mortal. You have doomed yourself. You doomed yourself to blindness, to darkness, to oblivion. You doomed yourself to see nothing of the greatness and the glory of God. I do not doom you. Get to that hell which is your self-appointed, self-chosen, self-desired place. And so the vision of that day of judgment comes and goes. It is the blinding light for me, and in its light I make resolution. I resolve to seek the good life with all the freshness of a new hope. No longer am I going to be satisfied with the second best and the second hand. I am going to get down to bedrock. I am going to search for reality. I am going no longer to self-condemn myself to the utmost oblivion of the uttermost darkness. I will, like Henry David Thoreau, seek to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life. I do not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear. I want to live deep and suck all the marrow of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut a broad swath, to drive life into a corner. That's me. Someone is in the shop front. I know who it is. I know what he wants. I hear him moving about, attempting to attract my attention by shuffling his feet and coughing. I know what he wants. He is a small lawyer, and he can wait till I write this about him. He is developing schemes to buy up estates cheaply and cut them up and sell them to town dwellers, small farmers, and the like. He is an immortal soul, and God will damn him for what he is making of his life. I can't help it. I must go and speak to him. The second-hand copy of Debrett's Peerage and Titles of Courtesy is ready for him. The price, second-hand, is £1. It is cheap, and he will take it. That was all in the morning at the beginning of the day. Now it is 9, and I am entirely different, a different creature from the man who looked down on this collection of halls, houses, churches, and slums in which I live and have what may be called my being. 10 hours have passed since I attempted to put down the ecstasy of the freshness of the new day, which so began for me. I can't see myself as I was then at all. Food has done it. I shut the shop at 7 and read parts of a parcel of new books that came in by the afternoon delivery. What a lot of rubbish is written, and what a lot of that rubbish is laboriously read by publishers and printed by compositors and sold by booksellers. I will not add to it. That ambition is dead, whatever else lives, dead, stillborn if you like, as a result of the unsuitable mating of the too big ambition with too little will. Content, gross, fleshy material, now possesses me, and food beget it. At 8, I tired of reading trash and put the smaller of my 2 pans on the gas stove. I cut up 4 tomatoes into segments and put them into the pan with a piece of butter. I take 2 eggs and break them into a cup, switching them up with a fork. The tomatoes and the butter sizzle agreeably, and a hot sparkling of fat rises up into the air from the heated pot. I pour my switched eggs over the tomatoes. Quickly the mixture solidifies, and I tip it out on my plate. It is delicious, and now with a pipe in my teeth, I am sublimely happy as I have ever been. It all eludes me, as it has eluded all of us who have ever thought of the strangeness of being. What am I? Filled with the wonder and the beauty of nature, I am at one with the joy of the universe. Filled with tomatoes and eggs, I am at one with life, and I am content. It comes to me, and it will do for an ending to these sheets I have written today. Only the infinite pity is equal to the infinite pathos of human life. And that is the end of that section. The next section heading is a high calling, but we will leave it there for this video. So a little bit of a depressing start to these passages with his thoughts on suicide. Evidently, our narrator is ruminating heavily on that subject. And then we have his account of a day, ending with his meal of tomatoes and eggs. And I admit, the very first time that I read this book a couple of years ago, I remember reading this passage about his tomatoes fried up in butter with egg, and thought, that actually sounds pretty good. And so I did make myself that as my dinner one night. And it's not bad, simple, and actually quite delicious. But we'll leave it at that for today.